In the ancient kingdom of Umueze, a cry pierced the thunder, the bird's cry of a royal child. But the wind did not rejoice, the trees did not sway in joy, for the child born that night carried a burden, one not of this world. The rain had fallen for 7 days without rest when Adora was born. The sky cracked with thunder, and a lone vulture circled above the palace. The midwives whispered among themselves. It was a sign, they said. The gods were not pleased. But as the queen smiled, exhausted yet proud, the king's mother, Mama Ugo, let out a startled cry. The queen's golden comb, passed down for generations, had vanished from the shrine where it was laid in Adora's honor. The room turned cold. Who took it? The king barked, storming into the chamber. It was just there. No one answered. No one had entered or left the room. The shrine was untouched, yet the comb was gone. That night, the palace diviner, Dibia Ikenna, was summoned. He brought his cowries, his bone charms, and his sacred chalk. Hours passed, and then came his voice, low and trembling. A curse from the womb. A spirit of restlessness clings to her soul. She's not a thief, but her hands will take what her heart does not desire. Yet silence swallowed the room. The king, Eze Obinna, looked upon his daughter with eyes that mixed love and terror. His firstborn, his heir, cursed before her first breath could dry. And thus began the lonely journey of Adora of Umueze. Years passed, and Adora grew into a radiant young girl. Her laughter echoed through the courtyards, and her presence brought warmth to every heart. But fear lingered beneath the smiles. Servants avoided her room. Palace maids kept their wrappers tied tighter than ever before. Not because she meant harm, but because things vanished whenever she was close. Restless, cowries, small trinkets from the king's council room. One morning, the queen's coral necklace, meant for the annual Yam festival, was gone. Adora had been the only one in the chamber. She stood there, confused, eyes brimming with tears. "I didn't take it, Mama," she whispered. Queen Nena's face softened, but she had no answers. She pulled Adora close and sighed deeply. "My daughter, the gods are silent, but we must be strong for you." Rumors began to grow legs in the village. Women at the stream spoke in hushed tunes. Children pointed at her during festivals. Onyaka Jo, they called her, the one with bad hands. And worse, suitors began to vanish. First, Ogiora, son of the respected farmer. Then Ikeni, a merchant's son. Once they learned of the strange stories, they stopped coming. The king watched in silence from his throne, hiding a shame too deep to confess. His daughter was beautiful and wise, but haunted. Every priest he summoned, every sacrifice offered, no solution came. The gods of Umueze were watching, but they remained quiet. Adora cried often, and each time she begged the wind, "Is there no one who will love me as I am?" The market square of Umueze bustled with life. The sounds of wooden pistols pounding yam echoed through the air. Traders shouted, goats bleated, and the scent of roasted maize filled the wind. But in a quiet corner of the palace courtyard, Adora sat alone. sketching shapes in the dust with a stick. It was another festival season, and again she had no suitor. The other maidens had adorned themselves with uli patterns and colorful wrappers, but Adora's heart was too heavy to dance. Then a voice, deep and curious, broke the silence. Why does a flower like you sit alone, away from the sun? She looked up quickly. A tall young man stood by the entrance, holding a carved wooden stool. His skin was the color of freshly cracked cola, and his eyes shimmered with kindness. "Who are you?" she asked, surprised. "I am Ebuka, son of late Nzechidi. I just returned from the kingdom of Anyoma. I carved stools for the palace." He smiled. Adora blinked. She had heard of him, a quiet craftsman whose father once contested for the throne before he died mysteriously during the last coronation season. He didn't seem to notice the invisible wall others kept around her. They spoke briefly about the sky, her drawings, and the sound of birds. When he laughed, it wasn't forced. When she spoke, he listened. As he left, he turned and said, "The gods made you different, not broken." For the first time in moons, Adora smiled, and the wind that always felt cold now carried warmth. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between Adora and Ebuka blossomed like okra after rain. They met in quiet places, beneath the Udala tree by the stream, by the abandoned well behind the palace kitchens, and sometimes in the market square, hidden behind baskets of yam and woven mat. Adora laughed more now, her eyes, once heavy with sadness, danced like fireflies at dusk. But still, she feared the truth of her condition. She had not told him. How could she? How could he understand? One evening, while Ebuka was carving a stool under the large ogbono tree, Adora walked up behind him and placed a beaded bangle in his arm. He looked at it and smiled. "This is beautiful," he said. "Where did you get it?" Adora paused. Her heart pounded. The truth was, she didn't know. It had been in her hand when she woke up that morning, and she couldn't remember how. It was just lying around," she mumbled. Avoiding his eyes, he nodded, unaware of the storm she carried. The palace was quiet that morning. The rooster's crow echoed through the still air, but it brought no peace. Inside the palace, Adora was restless. She had begun to feel safe with Ebuka, perhaps even loved. But deep within, fear gripped her soul like termites on dry wood. The curse, it had not gone. That same morning, Ebuka was invited to the palace by the queen herself to deliver a newly carved royal stool. Adora stood at the far end of the hallway, her heart swelling with pride as he presented the stool, every line carved with intention and meaning. Even the king, stern as ever, nodded silently. But as Ebuka turned to leave, he paused. His eyes narrowed at something dangling from Adora's wrapper. A small ivory pendant, one he had crafted a week for the palace treasurer. A pendant that had gone missing 3 days ago. He walked slowly back towards her. "Adora," he said quietly, "when did you get that pendant?" She froze. Her hand brushed against it instinctively. She hadn't even noticed it was there. I don't know. You don't know? His voice was calm, but his heart raced. Adora's lips quivered. For the first time in weeks, her shame returned in full force. I didn't steal it, Ebuka. I swear, it just appeared. His face fell. He didn't speak. He simply turned and walked away. Slow, deliberate steps, each one heavier than the last. Adora collapsed to the floor, tears staining the cold ground. Outside, the sky darkened. Though the sun still sat high, the gods were watching. That night, the moon hung low like a mournful eye watching the world. The breeze that often brought calm now carried tension, drifting through the trees and into the small mud huts where Ebuka sat alone, head bowed, fists clenched. He hadn't eaten all day. His aunt, Mama Uzo, had tried to speak to him, but he only stared into the air, lost in thought. Ebuka, she finally said, placing a bowl of yam porridge beside him. You look like someone who has walked into a thunderstorm and refused to take cover. He sighed, barely lifting his head. Mama Uzo, have you ever loved someone so much, only to find out they carried a truth that could destroy you? She paused, lowering herself beside him. Is this about Princess Adora? He nodded. She took something I made. Mama Uzo was silent for a long moment. Then she whispered, that girl has suffered, Ebuka. The palace hides more than gold and wine. There are secrets buried in the palace. Secrets even the gods whispers about. Ebuka looked up, confused. What do you mean? He said. I mean, open your heart, but keep your eyes on the wind. Adora's hands may steal, yes, but I do not believe her heart ever meant to. Back at the palace, Adora sat by her window, staring at the stars. Her tears had dried, but her shame had not. She whispered into the night, Chineke, why do you punish me for the cause I did not call? And far away, in the king's secret chamber, the chief priest and Eze Obinna spoke in hushed tones. Something ancient had begun to stir, and it would not return to sleep quietly. Days passed like shadows, slow and heavy. The palace had returned to its normal rhythm, but Adora's heart had not. Every time her feet touched the floors, she remembered Ebuka's eyes, how they darkened when he discovered the truth. Shame had built a fortress around her. Unable to bear the silence any longer, she left her chambers under the cover of light and made her way to Ebuka's hut. The moon lit her path, her wrapper dragged against the soil. When she arrived, she stood outside his door for a moment, unsure. Then she knocked softly. He opened the door, surprised, but his face then softened. Adora, please, I needed to see you, she said, voice breaking. Ebuka stepped aside without a word. She entered. The room was dim. A lantern burned beside a wooden stool. I don't expect you to forgive me, Ebuka. I wanted you to know that I hate what this thing is doing to me. I hate it with everything in me. Ebuka stopped quietly, staring at the flame. You should have told me, he said at last. I was afraid that you would leave, that you would look at me like everyone does. You say you didn't steal it on purpose, but the pain it caused was still real. Adora stepped closer. I've never wanted to hurt you. I swear, whatever this is, I want it gone. Even if it means walking into death. Evuka looked up. You would die to be free? No, she whispered. I'll die to be loved, without shame. For a moment, the room was still. Outside, the wind picked up. A storm was coming, not of rain, but of destiny. One night, when Nena broke, she knelt down before King Obinna and sobbed. My husband, the curse is eating her from inside. She sees things, she touches things, and they vanish. We must beg the gods, please, before we lose her. King Obinna was not a man of easy submission, but the pain in his daughter's eyes wore down even his iron pride. He summoned the chief priest that night. We will go east, to Ekejova, the grove of unspeaking gods, the last place where truth breathes without lies. At dawn, King Obinna and the chief priest journeyed east, far beyond Umueze boundaries, past Oji River, but across lands where trees whispered old names, into the forbidden grove of Ikejova, a forest no man dared enter, without blood in his mouth and fear in his heart. The grove was ancient, older than the kingdom itself. It was said the gods did not speak, they revealed, and when they revealed, they took something in return. For 3 days, the king and the priests fasted inside the grove. No fire, no talking, only silence and offerings. On the third night, the air trembled slightly. The wind blew with no source, and from the shrine tree, blood dripped upward. The chief priest fell into trance. His eyes rolled, his voice changed, older and ancient. She's touched by the spirit of Adanwi, the hand that takes. It caused someone from the womb by desperate blood. To cleanse her, one must enter the Ajofia, the forest of the 100 spirits. Within it grows the root of Obonike, guarded by the watchers of the lost. But only one must return, and the price must be paid in truth. And then silence. The priest collapsed. Kiwabina wept. He now knew Adara was cursed because of what he did to beget her. A secret part, a blood wound, a child in exchange for a life, or perhaps a kingdom. At dawn, the royal drum echoed across the land. Bum, 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 summoning every able-bodied man to the palace square. King Obinna stood at the head of the council hall, robed in red and gold, his face unreadable. Beside him sat chief priest, staff in hand, eyes clouded by secrets. The people gathered, murmuring, curious. The royal proclamation was rare and always dangerous. People of Umueze, the king began. Our land is plagued. Our daughter Adora carries a curse from birth, one we can no longer ignore. Murmurs spread across the crowd like dry Hamatan wind. Adora, watching from the palace balcony, clutched the wooden rail as whispers stung her ears. The gods have spoken, the chief priest declared. A cure lies deep within the evil forest, the heart of the forbidden tree, hidden beyond dead spots. The murmurs grew louder, faces twisted in fear. Get for, the king continued. We summon the brave. Any man who brings back a sacred token shall have my daughter's hand in marriage. More murmurs. Adara's heart thudded in her chest. She looked towards Ebuka, standing in the crowd. Their eyes met for only a second. Who among you is mad enough? The king challenged. Who among you dares to enter the forest and return with life? One by one, the warriors lowered their heads, avoiding the king's gaze. Fear was risen in their bones. But then, like thunder in a quiet sky, a single voice rose. I will go. It was Ebuka. Even the king's expression faltered. You? Yes, I will walk into death for her. Silence swept the courtyard. The birds stopped chirping, and from the balcony, tears fell from Adela's eyes, not of shame, but of hope. The morning of their departure arrived with an uneasy quiet. The sky wore a dull grey road, and even the village chickens refused to crow. 5 men had stepped forward to join Ebuka, each one strong, brave, and desperate for either glory or love. None more determined than Ebuka, whose heart beats not for the tune, but for the hearing of Adora. The chief priest stood before the sacred shrine, drawing markings on their forehead with a mixture of chalk and goat blood. We're going into a place where the sun does not rise, he intoned. No man returns unchanged. Some do not return at all. Ebuka nodded, gripping the carved spear given to him by his late father, a man whose name, Chidi, was once whispered in real circle until it faded like smoke. From a distance, Adora watched them gathered at the edge of the forest. She was veiled, dressed in black wrappers, as a sign of mourning. Mourning words could be lost. Her lips trembled. Ebuka, she said. He turned. Their eyes met across the space. Come back to me, she whispered, too short for anyone else to hear. Ebuka didn't speak. He simply pressed his palms to his chest, over his heart, and walked into the forest with the other. As they crossed the boundary, the air shifted, the trees groaned, the blackbird flew overhead and cried out once, then vanished into the leaves. The villagers stood in silence. Even the king, though he wore a proud face, clenched his jaw. Deep in the forest, the darkness opened its arm. The journey had begun, and none could forget who would return. In the shadows of the forest, something ancient had awoken, something that had been waiting for generations, and it knew the name of the one who dared to enter.